I want to go to the National Day of Mourning today. This is a very special day for Jewish people, particularly in Bondi, and that being the electorate of Wentworth. Joining me now is Independent MP for Wentworth, Allegra Spender. I'm going to get to a little bit of politics later, Allegra, but I do want to talk about how important this is today. There will be a moment at Bondi this afternoon, but also a reclaiming of the Opera House. It feels like a really important day.
It is a really important day. I think December the 14th is one of the darkest days of Australian history, and I think it is absolutely appropriate that we have a National Day of Mourning where people around the country can unite and share the devastation that all Australians feel about what happened on that day, and really resolve amongst ourselves, that we will all collectively as a country do everything we can for something like that not to happen again.
I feel like today should also be a turning point as well. There has been a mourning period to this point, but what I pick up from my suburb of Bondi is that people really want to see action, practical things now, and I don't think this week in Parliament has been all that edifying.
No. Look, I'd say that, in the last month, no one has covered themselves in glory in a political sense at a national political level. I think this week in Parliament was really important. I think the day of condolence speeches was really important. We had many people in the audience who were there, who were personally affected, who have lost loved ones, who were wounded, who were first responders. And I think the Parliament on the whole, in the main, showed enormous respect to those people. And then we passed what I think is important legislation. Now, it is imperfect, and what I will say, and really we need to be really clear of, this is the start, because this will take us, I think, many years to deal with the scourge of anti-Semitism. When I was growing up in the eastern suburbs, when I went to the bat mitzvahs of my friends, I didn't go through security guards to get to the synagogues. And I think that, over the longer term, that has to be our goal, that the Jewish Australians that we know and love don't have to educate, congregate, behind guards, behind security fences. And that is going to take sustained effort. So I think this is about both mourning, but this is about sustained effort over a period of time so that all Australians are safe, and really particularly that our Jewish Australians, are welcome and celebrated just like any other part of our community.
I don't think the anger directed towards Anthony Albanese has subsided all that much. When I spoke to you late December in Bondi, when we saw that memorial service down there where he was booed, I mean, we've seen progress here, but he's also said this week that he's not going to revisit the vilification part of those hate speech laws. This is what a lot of Jewish people want, but as we've seen from the split in the coalition today, this seems politically very difficult. What is your position about advocating for and pushing for what Jewish people, and look, not one homogenous group, not one issue, but this seems to be the overwhelming push that they want to see vilification included? What's your view?
Absolutely. I mean, I have been pushing this for over the last 18 months. I worked with the ECAJ and Equality Australia to put forward changes back in February 2024 on vilification. And the reason why it is so important is because people like Wissam Haddad, he is an hate preacher. He has called for absolutely atrocious things in relation to the Jews. And we know that violence doesn't start with violence. It starts with words. But currently, under the current federal laws, the ECAJ had to take Wissam to as a civil proceedings. It cost them more than $1 million.
So it took what's just been passed in Parliament, he still has carte blanche in your view?
So it depends. There's a bit of now much more of a patchwork of laws across states. So depending on the states and things like that, he might have been captured in other ways. But the point is, we do need a national approach. We need national anti-vilification laws. Now, I know that this is sensitive and I know that people worry about this, but there are countries like Canada which have had these laws in place for many years. We have Western Australia. They have had these laws in place for many years. They haven't been abused. So I'm not going to let this drop. I hope that this comes up in the Royal Commission, and I'll continue to put the pressure on the government, who has to their credit, recognise that this is a gap and they're willing to move. But this is the time for the coalition and, frankly, the Greens to stand up and say, yes, we do support this. Because you can say all the things you want about, fighting anti-Semitism, but you then have to come down to action. And this is really important action that the Jewish community has asked for. And we can do this. We can get it right. We can save protections for Australians who want to have free speech, but draw bright lines around vilification, dehumanisation, that we know is a contributor to violence and extremism.
Allegra, thank you for your time as always. We'll talk soon.
Thanks so much, Laura.